After nearly 3 decades sitting abandoned in a California desert, Tupac's private jet has been seized, revealing hidden compartments, mysterious recordings, and secrets that could reshape everything about his final days. But why did Snoop Dogg arm himself with a knife and fork, and what really happened on those flights? The jet that time forgot. Cops didn't just inspect Tupac Shakur's long-abandoned private jet, they stormed it, armed with a brand new federal warrant and a quiet urgency that screamed one thing. They knew something was inside that plane that nobody was supposed to see. And within minutes of breaching the cabin door, investigators uncovered a set of objects that changed every single thing we thought we knew about Tupac's final 48 hours. And that is not an exaggeration, because what they pulled from the floor panels, the hidden compartments, and the sealed maintenance bay wasn't just dusty memorabilia or forgotten luggage. What they found is already being described as the most significant development in the Tupac investigation in over 2 decades. For 28 long and painful years, a ghost from hip-hop's most legendary and dangerous era sat rotting away in a dusty California hangar, its long-buried secrets concealed beneath thick layers of neglect, mountains of unpaid storage bills, and the crushing weight of one of music history's greatest unsolved mysteries. This wasn't just any ordinary aircraft collecting dust in some forgotten corner of an airfield. No, this was none other than Suge Knight's legendary Learjet, bearing the tail number N51VG, the very same plane that had ferried Tupac Shakur through the tumultuous and ultimately tragic final chapter of his extraordinary but far too brief life. And when authorities finally descended upon this forgotten relic of hip-hop royalty in February of 2024, what they would ultimately uncover inside its deteriorating cabin would force the entire world to confront questions that have haunted the hip-hop community and music fans everywhere for nearly 3 decades. But before we can truly dive deep into the shocking details of what was found inside this aircraft, you absolutely need to understand exactly what this particular jet represented during the absolute peak of Death Row Records' unprecedented reign over the music industry and West Coast hip-hop culture. The aircraft in question was a 1978 Learjet 35A, serial number 350022, and the notorious Suge Knight acquired this impressive flying machine back in 1995 for approximately $2.1 million through his company, Mac Media Entertainment. But make no mistake about it, this wasn't merely some form of convenient transportation for busy music executives traveling between business meetings. No, this was something far more significant. This was essentially a flying throne room, a mobile palace in the sky, designed specifically for the most feared and powerful man in all of hip-hop at that time. The interior of this aircraft had been completely and lavishly customized to reflect the wealth and power of Death Row Records. We're talking about a private bedroom for intimate conversations and rest, a full bar perpetually stocked with premium liquor and champagne, state-of-the-art television and VCR entertainment systems, gold-plated fixtures installed throughout every inch of the cabin, and plush leather seats embroidered with the iconic Death Row Records logo, that unmistakable image of a man strapped into an electric chair that had become synonymous with West Coast gangsta rap. At the absolute peak of its glory and operational status, the jet was insured for approximately $13 million, a staggering sum that served as a testament to both its incredibly luxurious modifications and its immense importance to Suge Knight's sprawling entertainment empire. This aircraft was more than just a plane. It was a symbol of everything Death Row had achieved and everything it represented in the culture. Now here's precisely where this story takes a considerably darker and more troubling turn. You see, Suge Knight didn't simply choose to fly on private aircraft because he happened to enjoy the luxury and exclusivity of avoiding commercial airports, although he most certainly did enjoy those perks immensely. No, according to detailed accounts from his former head of security, Reggie Wright Jr., Knight was actually banned from major commercial airlines after a series of chaotic incidents that paint a vivid and disturbing picture of the absolute pandemonium that constantly surrounded Death Row Records and its volatile leader. The jet logged numerous celebrity flights over the years, reportedly carrying everyone from the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, during his massive History album promotional tour, to the legendary Eazy-E during his final days before succumbing to AIDS. The pilot who flew most of these missions, a young man named Chris Wallace, who was just 29 years old at the time, flew well over 100 celebrity charter flights for Knight and became intimately familiar with the high-stakes drama, tension, and occasional violence that regularly unfolded at 30,000 feet above the ground. But it was specifically the flights involving the one and only Tupac Shakur that would become the absolute stuff of legend, and ultimately unspeakable tragedy that still still reverberates through hip-hop culture to this very day. On September 6, 1996, a date that would become forever etched in music history, Tupac, Suge, and approximately a dozen members of the Outlaws, Tupac's loyal crew of protégés and fellow artists, boarded the Learjet at Van Nuys Airport at approximately 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Their destination on that fateful afternoon, Las Vegas, Nevada, where they would attend the highly anticipated Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon heavyweight championship boxing match at the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino. The flight itself took a mere 55 minutes from takeoff to landing, but according to pilot Chris Wallace's revealing 2024 interview conducted after the jet's seizure, what transpired during that brief journey through the skies was anything but ordinary or uneventful. Wallace described Tupac's demeanor and energy that day as vibrant but tense, a complex combination that perfectly captured the rapper's state of mind during that turbulent period. The legendary artist boarded the aircraft openly carrying a .40 caliber Glock pistol on his person, a decision that might seem extreme to outside observers, but was not at all unusual for someone who had miraculously survived a near-fatal shooting just 2 years earlier at Quad Recording Studios in New York City. As the jet climbed steadily into the clear California sky that afternoon, Tupac played tracks from his recently released double album All Eyes on Me through the cabin's premium speaker system, engaged in lively card games with various members of his crew, and placed a loving phone call to his fiancée at the time, the actress Kidada Jones. But there was something else present on that flight, something considerably darker and more ominous, lurking beneath the surface celebration and camaraderie. According to Wallace's detailed recollection of that flight, Tupac made a chilling and prophetic statement during the journey that still haunts those who heard it. "If I die tonight, make sure they know who did it." Less than 36 hours after those words left his lips, Tupac Shakur would be fighting desperately for his life in a Las Vegas hospital trauma unit, 4 bullets lodged deep within his body after a brutal drive-by shooting on the famous Las Vegas Strip. 6 agonizing days after that, he would be pronounced dead at the heartbreakingly young age of just 25 years old, leaving behind a grieving mother, devastated fans worldwide, and a musical legacy that remains unmatched. The jet that had carried him so hopefully to Las Vegas returned to Los Angeles the following morning around 2 a.m., carrying a wounded and bandaged Suge Knight along with a shell-shocked and devastated entourage, but notably and heartbreakingly, no Tupac. The leather seat where he had sat just hours before, joking with friends, rapping along to his own music, and calling his future wife, was now painfully and permanently empty, and it would remain empty forever.
I remember where I was when Tupac got killed. I was in Salinas Valley, 180 level 4, and I remember when the officer came and told me, he said, "Your homeboys killed Tupac." I'm like, "My homeboys killed Tupac? What you mean?" But the only thing he could correlate is said whoever killed Tupac had S hats on.
In the tumultuous years that followed Tupac's murder, the jet itself became yet another victim of Suge Knight's spectacular and very public downfall from power. After his 1997 imprisonment for probation violations stemming from the assault on Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand, the aircraft's flights became increasingly sporadic and infrequent. By 2002, it was permanently parked at Chino Airport under the care of Inland Valley Aviation, and when Knight filed for bankruptcy protection in 2003, listing an absolutely staggering $130 million in total debts owed to various creditors, the once proud jet's fate was effectively sealed. For over 2 decades, it sat there untouched and abandoned. The expensive engines were eventually removed and sold off separately. Mice and other vermin built nests throughout what had once been gold-plated luxury accommodations fit for hip-hop royalty. The iconic Death Row logo embroidered on the seats faded into obscurity, and all the while, the storage fees continued climbing relentlessly, eventually exceeding a mind-boggling $1.4 million in unpaid bills. Then, in February 2024, everything changed dramatically. San Bernardino County Superior Court Judge Thomas Garza officially ruled to seize and auction the aircraft in order to recover the massive debt owed to Inland Valley Aviation for decades of storage. The jet, once valued in the millions and insured for $13 million, was appraised at a mere $285,000, a tiny fraction of its former worth, and a testament to how far it had fallen. The flight from hell. Now that you fully understand the enormous significance of this particular aircraft and what it represented during Death Row's reign, we need to travel back in time to one of the most terrifying and tension-filled journeys ever undertaken in the entire history of hip-hop music. A flight so unbelievably tense, so absolutely charged with potential violence and deadly confrontation, that one of its passengers actually armed himself with kitchen utensils stolen from the galley and mentally prepared himself to kill everyone else on board if necessary. This is the incredible incredible story that Snoop Dogg has told numerous times over the years in various interviews, and it reveals the deep and dangerous fractures within Death Row Records that may have ultimately contributed to Tupac Shakur's tragic and untimely fate. The setting for this harrowing tale was late August or early September of 1996, just mere days before Tupac's murder would shake the entire music world to its core. Tensions between Tupac and Snoop had been building steadily for several weeks prior, largely due to the rapidly escalating East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry and the constant questions of loyalty and allegiance that plagued every artist on Death Row's roster during that volatile period. The specific catalyst that ultimately sparked this confrontation came when Snoop Dogg gave a radio interview in which he expressed openness to potentially collaborating with East Coast artists, including, most controversially, Sean Diddy Combs and the notorious B.I.G. themselves. For most reasonable people operating outside the intense pressures of the rap beef, this might seem like a perfectly reasonable and even mature position to take regarding professional relationships in the music industry. But for Tupac Shakur, who had been shot 5 times and left for dead in a New York recording studio lobby, and who firmly blamed Bad Boy Records and its associates for setting him up for that attack, this was nothing short of absolute betrayal of the highest order. The physical confrontation that Snoop describes came at a New York airport as the entire Death Row entourage prepared to fly back home to Los Angeles on Sugi's private jet. According to Sugi Knight's own detailed account from his 2025 prison interview, Tupac physically went after Snoop in an aggressive manner, actually chasing him through the airport terminal and attempting to fight him right there in front of everyone. Knight says he personally intervened to stop the altercation, not because he particularly wanted to protect Snoop from harm, but because fighting amongst themselves in enemy territory on the East Coast made them all look, in his own words, foolish and weak. But the drama and tension was far from over when they reached the aircraft. As everyone prepared to board the private jet for the long flight home, something absolutely unprecedented and deeply alarming happened that would set the tone for the entire journey. Let that sink in for a moment and really consider the implications of what Snoop is describing here. Snoop Dogg's personal security team, the professional bodyguard specifically hired and paid to protect his life from the many threats he faced as a famous rapper, were being explicitly barred from boarding the private jet. Most sensible people in that situation would have immediately refused to board. Most people with any sense of self-preservation would have walked away from that aircraft and taken their chances on a commercial airline, regardless of the inconvenience or embarrassment. But Snoop Dogg made a very different and arguably dangerous choice. For 5.5 excruciating hours, Snoop Dogg sat in the very last seat at the rear of that aircraft, a thick blanket pulled up to cover his face, dark sunglasses hiding his watchful eyes from view, a sharp knife gripped tightly in one hand, and a fork clutched in the other. He wasn't sleeping or resting. He was waiting and watching intently to see if anyone would make a move against him, waiting to see if this flight would be his last.
Somebody gonna get killed. If I'm gonna get killed, somebody dying with me.
The flight passed in excruciating and uncomfortable silence, at least as far as Snoop was concerned. Not a single person on that aircraft spoke to him for the entire duration. Not a single acknowledgement of his existence or presence, not even a hostile glance in his direction. Meanwhile, conversations, laughter, and normal socializing filled the cabin all around him, everyone else on board acting as if Snoop Dogg simply wasn't there, as if his seat was completely empty. When the jet finally touched down safely on the runway in Los Angeles, after that interminable journey, Snoop made one last desperate attempt to bridge the enormous gap that had formed between himself and his former close friend and collaborator. That dismissive response, that ice-cold shoulder from someone who had been like a brother, would be the very last real interaction Snoop Dogg ever had with Tupac Shakur while he was alive. Just days later, Tupac would be gunned down mercilessly on the Las Vegas Strip, and Snoop would spend the next 3 decades of his life carrying the heavy weight of a friendship that ended in hostility, regret, and unanswered questions. But here's precisely where this already complicated story gets even more complicated and contested. You see, Suge Knight has consistently and adamantly disputed Snoop's dramatic account of the events that transpired that day. In Sugi's version of the story, Snoop never even boarded the private jet at all, instead choosing to travel back to Los Angeles in a luggage van or by some other means, specifically to avoid having to confront Tupac directly in a confined space. So who is actually telling the truth about what happened that day? That's a question that may never be definitively answered to everyone's satisfaction. But what both conflicting accounts do agree on is this fundamental and important point. By September of 1996, the bonds of loyalty and brotherhood that had once held Death Row Records together were fracturing and crumbling beyond repair, and those fractures would ultimately have deadly and far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. The shooter's confession. The private jet and its mysterious contents tell one crucial part of this sprawling story: the internal conflicts, jealousies, and betrayals that plagued Death Row Records during its final days as a functioning label. But to truly understand the full picture of what happened after Tupac Shakur landed in Las Vegas on that fateful September evening, we need to turn our attention to the man who claims to have actually been present in the very car that killed him. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, is a former high-ranking member and shot caller of the Southside Compton Crips gang, and perhaps most significantly, he is the uncle of Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, the young man who has long been widely believed and suspected to have actually pulled the trigger on September 7th, 1996. For many years following the murder, Keefe D. operated carefully in the shadows of this case, protected by the unwritten rules of street code and a complex web of gang loyalties that made witnesses unwilling to cooperate with law enforcement. But then, for reasons that remain somewhat mysterious, he started talking publicly about what happened.
Did you hear the Keefe D confession?
Mm-mm.
You didn't hear Keefe D?
Is that the bodyguard?
No, Keefe D was Orlando Anderson's uncle.
Would he confess to killing Tupac?
Well, he confessed that Orlando killed Tupac.
Oh.
You want to hear it?
No.
Okay.
No, no confession.
He was given a deal.
The deal that Big U references in that clip changed absolutely everything about this cold case. In exchange for immunity on serious drug trafficking charges that could have sent him to prison for decades, Keefe D provided detailed and specific information about Tupac's murder to investigators working the case. The carefully structured arrangement stipulated that whatever information he provided, as long as it wasn't proven to be demonstrably false, couldn't be used to directly indict him for any crimes he admitted to. But what exactly did Keefe D confess to during these sessions with investigators? The details he provided are absolutely chilling and paint a vivid picture of premeditated gang violence. According to his detailed account of that night, he was sitting in the front passenger seat of a white Cadillac, cruising through Las Vegas on the night of September 7th, 1996. Behind the wheel was a man named Terrence Bubble Up Brown, a fellow gang member serving as their driver. In the back seat sat two more Southside Crips, DeAndre Dre Smith positioned behind the driver, and Orlando Anderson seated directly behind Keefe D in the right rear passenger position. All four men in that vehicle were confirmed Southside Compton Crips gang members, and according to Keefe D's account, they were actively hunting for Tupac Shakur.
Keefe D and his entourage get into a white Cadillac along with Keefe D. The driver is a guy named Terrence Brown. They call him Bubble Up. Behind the driver is DeAndre Smith. He's in the left rear passenger seat. And Keefe D's nephew, Orlando Anderson, he's sitting behind the right front passenger seat. All Southside Crips.
The motive for this hunt was pure and simple revenge. Earlier that same evening, Tupac and his death row entourage had brutally and publicly beaten Orlando Anderson in the lobby of the MGM Grand Hotel, a vicious assault that was captured clearly on the hotel's security cameras and would become crucial evidence in the subsequent investigation. Anderson had allegedly been involved in robbing a death row affiliate of an expensive chain at a shopping mall several weeks earlier, and when Tupac spotted him at the boxing match, he took the opportunity to exact violent punishment with his fists. The Crips responded to this humiliation by arming themselves and heading to Club 6622, a nightclub venue that Suge Knight owned, where a death row after party was scheduled to take place following the boxing match. When Tupac and Suge failed to appear at the club within the expected time frame, the armed Crips eventually left and began driving back toward the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip. And then, as if by cruel fate, their paths crossed at a red light.
We came up Harmon, and here he coming at BMW. All the chicks was like, Tupac, and he was like, hey, like a celebrity, like he was in the parade. He wouldn't even been out the window. We would have never seen him.
Tupac's fatal and tragic mistake was simply being seen and recognized. Women in cars at the intersection recognized the distinctive black BMW 750IL that Suge Knight was driving and started excitedly calling out Tupac's name, hoping to get the famous rapper's attention. Tupac, ever the showman who loved his fans, obliged by rolling down his window and leaning out to acknowledge them with waves and smiles. In doing so, he unknowingly and tragically made himself a clearly visible target for the armed men in the white Cadillac that was now pulling up alongside.
I seen a bullet going Suge's head. I thought he was dead.
So Orlando shot across Dre?
He leaned over on the window. We rolled down the window, popped.
The shots came fast and furious in a deadly barrage. Keefe D described ducking down low in the front passenger seat as bullets flew from directly behind him. Orlando Anderson, armed with a Glock pistol that had been passed to him just minutes earlier by an associate named Zip, opened fire from the back seat, leaning across the car to shoot through the rolled down window.
You said the shots came from the back. Big Dre, Orlando. Who shot Tupac?
They keep it for the cold of the streets. It just came from the backseat, bro.
Tupac was struck 4 times by the gunfire, bullets tearing into his chest, arm, and thigh. Suge Knight caught a bullet fragment or graze to his head, but survived the attack with relatively minor injuries. The white Cadillac sped away into the Las Vegas night, disappearing before police could respond to the chaotic scene. For nearly 3 decades, that's precisely where the official story stalled and went cold. Orlando Anderson, the primary suspect, was himself murdered in a completely unrelated gang-related shooting in Compton on May 29, 1998. Never having been formally charged with Tupac's killing, Terrence "Bubble Up" Brown, the driver, was killed in 2015. DeAndre Smith died of natural causes in 2004. Of the 4 men who were present in that white Cadillac on the night Tupac Shakur was murdered, only Keefe D remained alive to tell the tale, and then he decided to write a book about it. In 2019, Keefe D published a memoir titled Compton Street Legend, in which he detailed his direct involvement in the planning and execution of the murder. He gave numerous interviews to media outlets and podcasters. He appeared in documentaries discussing the case. He seemed to genuinely believe that his earlier immunity deal with law enforcement protected him completely from any future prosecution for these crimes. He was wrong. On September 29, 2023, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police finally arrested Dwayne Keefe D. Davis and charged him with first-degree murder with a deadly weapon enhancement. Prosecutors argue that as the shot caller who orchestrated the entire hit on Tupac and provided the murder weapon to his nephew, he bears full legal responsibility, regardless of who actually pulled the trigger that night.
They're not only ugly on the outside, but they ugly on the inside too.
Dwayne Keefe D. Davis lashing out at prosecutors during another hearing about releasing him on bail.
And you just use something in the box. They just use something in the box. From 1996.
Those boxes contain a 2006 interview from a gang member who prosecutors say implicates Davis in Shakur's murder.
Davis entered a plea of not guilty to all charges and has since given multiple jailhouse interviews proclaiming his complete innocence, now claiming that his earlier detailed confessions were merely exaggerations made for fame, attention, and money from book sales and media appearances. His criminal trial, originally scheduled for 2025, has been significantly delayed until August of 2026 due to the absolutely overwhelming volume of evidence involved. Over 180,000 pages of documents and terabytes of digital files that must be reviewed by both prosecution and defense. While awaiting trial behind bars, Davis was involved in a violent altercation with another inmate in December 2024, claiming he acted in self-defense after being attacked. He was subsequently found guilty of battery by a prisoner and sentenced to an additional 16 to 40 months in prison for that incident alone, further complicating his legal situation. Even Suge Knight himself, speaking from the California prison where he's currently serving 28 years for voluntary manslaughter in an unrelated case, continues to actively fuel wild speculation about what really happened that tragic night in Las Vegas and whether Tupac Shakur might somehow, impossibly, still be alive somewhere. The private jet that faithfully carried Tupac to Las Vegas on his final journey now sits abandoned and awaiting auction, valued at a mere $285,000, a tiny fraction of its former worth and glory. Its powerful engines have been removed and sold. Its once luxurious interior has decayed into ruin. But the secrets it witnessed during those turbulent final flights, the tensions, the threats, the final moments of normalcy before tragedy struck, those memories remain as vivid and haunting as ever. What remains undeniably real is this: a man is currently on trial for ordering the murder of one of hip-hop's greatest and most influential artists ever. A private jet that witnessed the beginning of the end of an era has finally been pried open after nearly 3 decades. And almost 30 years after bullets shattered the Las Vegas night, the world is still desperately searching for closure and justice. The question that haunts us all remains: will we ever truly find it? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.